Hello everyone, welcome to Please Tell Me. First, I would like to apologize for not updating this episode on Tuesday. If you have subscribed to my channel, thanks very much. This would be the first episode of the second half in our first season. Our first topic this week is for a very hot item in China. At this special time, what can be more popular than face masks, sanitizers, or gloves? The answer is helmets. Helmets for motorbikes and electric scooter riders. In April, Chinese Traffic Department released a statement to reinforce the management over motorbike and electric scooter riders who do not wear helmets. Since then, each state started to roll out regulations on how they will address the issue. Most of them have a requirement on mandatory wearing helmets on motorbike or electric bikes, and the violation can lead to a fine of 50 yuan, which is about $7, effective July 1st. Frankly speaking, at least from what I can say, no one wears helmets on electric scooters, and quite a few people do not use helmets on motorbikes. Considering there are more than 87 million of motorbikes and more than 300 million of electric scooters in China, helmets become extremely hot. The helmet costs a few dollars the day before being priced over $30 overnight. I know a couple of dollars seem ridiculous for a legit helmet. I had some research done. No helmet at this price range says they have met national standards. Motorbikes riders may want to spend hundreds of dollars on expensive helmets. For most low-speed electric scooters, a $10 helmet is way better than no helmet at all, because it's so hot that smart people follow the track of face masks and made millions of dollars in a couple weeks. I always hear some complaints that China is a very complicated place to do business. For example, it may take several months to have the company registration approved, or the complexity behind the intelligence properties. These are not complex at all. I do not believe there is any differences in terms of the complexity of doing business in the US and China, as long as they are written on paper. You can complain that the government takes too long to review documents. At the same time, the government also released many regulations for fast-track application. The government were not designed for fast services from the very beginning. Your product may be copied by an unknown small factory in remote China. Please find an attorney because there is intelligent property law. The same spirit applies to both sides. If Huawei believes they are mistreated, they should file the lawsuit instead of pretending to be tough. Businesses from both countries have the tendency to claim how correct and innocent they are before really understanding documents. Another layer of so-called complexities are those unspoken rules. For example, why the nation allows people to buy low-quality cheap helmets. There is a national standard for helmets. Enforcing the standards on all products in the market will certainly push the price high, so a lot of people have to make the trade-off between a 50 yuan fine or a 400 yuan helmet. Setting the standards high can also eliminate many manufacturers, which means eliminating a lot of jobs. This is very fundamental logic for a lot of Chinese officials. Let's just get something first and then get better along the way. You have to understand and set your brain to the similar frequency before doing any business in China. McDonald's offered a very different product line for Chinese customers. Similarly, not every rule is written in the US. I had to admit that the US is a much more homogeneous society and has a lot of less unspoken rules. The environment is relatively safe, which could be a potential disadvantage for a business when they try to be multinational. However, it's another story if you want to start selling gas or building missiles. The state-owned companies are another deal. I don't really think any Chinese private company has figured out how to compete either. Before the next news, there is one thing I have to clarify. Most Chinese know Chinese Kung Fu just like Americans. Nothing. Sometimes they may try a few things for exercise purposes, while the moves in the movies are only existed in movies. For example, my mother-in-law practices Tai Chi every morning in the park, but it doesn't mean she can get on top of the roof without a ladder. The master of one kind of Tai Chi, Mr. Ma Baoguo, who is 68 years old, participated in a friendly fight match. After 4 seconds, he was knocked down by a free fight amateur. The entire process was quick and quite brutal to watch, especially for a 60 years old senior citizen. In his early videos, Mr. Ma has some special magic power. Those young men bounce 10 feet away just by a single magic touch. Another strong guy tried to push him away, but Mr. Ma did not move an inch. Well, if you have probably watched the movie Kung Fu Panda, everything sounds so familiar. The panda finally learned the spirit of Kung Fu around the end of the movie. He destroyed the villain tiger by a magic little finger touch. By the way, Mr. Ma did look like a panda after being knocked out. You can see the bruise around his eye. Mr. Ma still has a lot of followers who believe he does have some extraordinary Tai Chi capacities. In China, there is a special word to describe such capacity called 特异功能, which translates to a very special ability or X-Men. The difference is Chinese X-Men do not extend metal blades from the fist. There are some examples. A man can blend 2 steel spoons together within seconds. This sounds like the Magneto. A man can get a live snake from an empty pot. It's pretty cool. A lady can put her hands into boiling cooking oil. Many chicken wing companies may attempt to hire her to reduce work-related injuries. When I was young, I watched a man use a power drill to drill his head. It sounds like he doesn't need a $10 helmet while riding his electric scooters. Most of the X-Men mentioned above claim they have the ability to forecast the future. They fail to forecast the future that they ended up in jail, while turning all influences into cash. They sold people expensive ash, did not cure anything, or collected tuition from students. In return, students had to meditate while wearing an aluminum pot to collect the qi from the universe. Some even turn it into a religion and make themselves a god, which was called illegal religion by Chinese officials. No matter legal or illegal, the question is, should we draw a line on what people should believe or not? Believing a man can get a live snake from an empty pot doesn't really hurt anything. Believing you can use qi to throw people 10 feet away can cause serious damage on yourself. How about not vaccinating your children, even if the COVID-19 vaccine is available? If we should allow people to believe traditional herbs can cure coronavirus, or at people's will, injecting disinfectants to kill viruses out of the belief of the current present? The line is absolutely tricky. The original fundamental logic of the US is freedom. Over years, the line on freedom has been pushed back further and further. The COVID-19 is a big test on how far we have gone. On the contrary, the fundamental logic of China is equity or inequity. The COVID-19 is also a big test on how far Chinese have gone on the equity road. I understand it's maybe hard to believe. I will discuss in detail in my later episodes. There is another famous funny story. In 1984, a Chinese told people he can turn water into oil that burns. The Chinese government gave him about $80,000 back in 1987 and supported him in official Chinese news. We all know what happened later. Turning water into oil was not very successful. That guy was put into prison in 1998 after 14 years of performance. This week is a very special week in Beijing, China because of 2 conferences. Normally, they will be held in March, but this year, because of the pandemic crisis, were delayed to May. These two conferences are National People's Congress and the National Committee of Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. Technically, the first conference, which includes about 3,000 members, is the highest organ of state power and the national legislature of China. You may think these two work as the two chambers in the US Congress once a year. For my show, I will try my best to stay away from politics, as I believe politics are not very important and sometimes irrelevant. What is really interesting is those people who participated in the conferences will present all kinds of proposals. Some of them will be used by the government, some of them will not. I will just list a few. CEO from Baidu, which is the Chinese Google, a proposal to create an access system to the personal information collected for fighting COVID-19, reinforcing the data management and regulate how to collect personal data in special times. CEO from Tech, a Chinese artificial intelligence company, a proposal to utilize artificial intelligence in smart education and healthcare diagnosis. CEO from Anta, which is a Chinese sneaker company just like Nike, a proposal to send cash equivalents to low-income families to promote consumptions. CEO from a Chinese CPA firm, a proposal to penalize company who fabricated financial statements. CEO from Lenovo, the computer company, a proposal to make personal computer as strategic supplies and provide subsidies to buy. CEO from New Orient, a Chinese education company. His proposal will be very welcomed by a lot of parents. He proposed to develop a sole purpose study-only touchscreen. You may think, wow, there are a lot of CEOs in the meeting, which I believe Americans should not be surprised about, as there is one in the White House now and many more around him. To be honest, I believe all those proposals sound like great ideas and need to be carried out across the world. Which parent doesn't want a study-only touchscreen for their children? No one is sure about how their personal data collected during COVID-19 will be used and protected. Business people, CEOs, are true leaders for their understandings, courages, and wisdom. The government has summoned many for the country's next step. Well, there is one concern. Business people are normally two-dimensional or binary. Their decision-making process is either from the perspective of developing business or financially valuable. It's absolutely useful while managing a company, but has some side effects in managing a nation. For example, we should eliminate immigrants to save jobs for Americans. We should reopen our nation no matter what because the shutdown is costing too much. 1.5 to 2 million people should have died without me compared to 100,000. All of this sounds reasonable if you do simple math. The side effect turns the entire nation into a mathematical problem because it lacks the third and most complex dimension, social. Business people may never pay attention to the social dimension unless it's part of the marketing, which I agree with. If I have a company, our sole purpose is to be profitable relentlessly. It's doubtful if a nation can do well by just adding things up. In a company, people listen to the CEO because that's where the paychecks come from. For a country, people do not necessarily listen to the CEO. The CEO serves people. Raining is very special to a lot of Chinese cities, no matter large or small. About 10 years ago in July, a heavy rain hit Beijing and the city was flooded. About 80,000 passengers were stuck in Beijing International Airport. Some subway lines were stopped. Thousands of cars were flooded and 79 people died. On the 22nd of May, another rain hit Guangzhou, a southern large city. Again, passengers were stuck in the airport, subway stopped, and thousands of cars were flooded. 4 people died. Such tragic events happen every year in many cities of China. I have a degree in civil engineering, so I can tell you all day about how the city drainage system should be better and more carefully planned. I just cannot blame Chinese civil engineers. They are not less capable than their foreign colleagues. The city drainage systems are normally very expensive to build. Most importantly, people don't see it. The natural disasters seem to destroy humans more often. Houston, Texas had a bad experience in Hurricane Harvey a few years ago. California had the wildfire issue every year, let alone the COVID-19. Are all natural disasters preventable? From a science perspective, it's impossible. For example, most of the buildings in the state I live in have a 8-degree seismic design, which means the building will survive in an 8-degree earthquake. What if a 9-degree earthquake happens? A 9-degree earthquake is not twice as bad as 8 degree, but 10 times worse. Most likely the building will not survive. Can we design a building to a 9 degree? Of course. Statistically speaking, it's not necessary because a 9-degree earthquake is highly unlikely to happen and the cost increases. One alternative is we can simply just build a single-story 9-feet building everywhere. How can we eliminate the wildfire hazards in California? Very simple, cut all trees. The COVID, if everyone can stay at home for the rest of their life, it will be gone. However, all these great alternatives come with very great expenses. Compared to the COVID, the flooded Chinese cities have a very slight issue. They only need to allocate more money to fix the city drainage system. Well, the questions are the same. If people may only see it once every 5 years, is it really necessary to spend that money? It's never an easy trade-off. Just because it's not easy, it's the government's job. Thanks for listening to Please Tell Me. I will see you next Tuesday, for sure.